the EP Podcast. Heard everywhere podcasts can be found, and always at theeppodcast.com.
This episode of the EP Podcast split into 3 different sections today. Hi, my name's Chris. You're listening to Evergreen Park's podcast, the EP Podcast. And today we announce the entire field of 32 in the Battle of Evergreen Park. The number 1 seeds in all of the pods were announced a couple weeks ago, but the contest really starts over the next week. And then for the remainder of August, you, the listener, the people of Evergreen Park, will be voting round by round, matchup by matchup to see who will be the champion of Evergreen Park this year. And new this year, I have a prize. I didn't have a prize last year, and I was thinking to myself, we need a prize, something that's valuable to an Evergreen Park business. And so what I'm going to do is give away a month of free advertising anywhere on the Broadcast Basement On-Demand Radio Network to the winner of the Battle of Evergreen Park, so they can run their ad on the EP Podcast, telling everybody in Evergreen Park about them. Extra promotion after winning the Battle of Evergreen Park. Or they may say, hey, I want to be on Socks in the Basement. Over 1 million listener streams in the last calendar year. I want my message on that. Sure, the team is terrible, but the podcast is huge. They could pick that one as well. Lots of other options. We'll run it all down for the winner. One business that does not need to win because they have been sponsoring this show for years, the First National Bank of Evergreen Park. Your child's bright financial future starts with learning good money habits early in life. Help your kids get ahead with a Junior Savers account from the First National Bank of Evergreen Park. With a Junior Savers account, kids can earn interest on every dollar they deposit. That way they get to watch their money grow. They get a statement in the mail every month. I could show it to my little guy. Plus, my account is connected to his. If somebody gives me a gift for him, it's real easy to deposit and then move it over to his account. And eventually he can graduate into a big kid account, a young adult account. Maybe he gets a business account one day, takes over the world. Get into the First National Bank of Evergreen Park in that iconic building at 95th and Pulaski, member FDIC. I mentioned an episode in 3 parts. Part 1 will be 1/2 of the 32 team field in the Battle of Evergreen Park. Then we're going to have a great Health Corner segment with OSF Little Company of Mary. It's perfect for returning to school. And then after that, along with giving you your EP Podcast word on the street, you get the other 16 in the field of 32 for the Battle of Evergreen Park. All right, let's take a look at the first half. The first 16 teams, one side of the bracket for the Battle of Evergreen Park. 32 contestants. This was hard. Trust me, I stressed about this. I was very worried I was going to put somebody in who everybody said, oh, they shouldn't be in there. Somebody was going to get aggravated, they got left out. Somebody wasn't going to like the fact that a chain made it in. That happened once or twice. I tried to avoid that, but some of these I could not avoid, and I'll explain them as I go through. I did keep the 2 very simple rules though. 1, you had to be in Evergreen Park this year. None of these just outside of the EP, people like to go across the street, none of that. 2, I really wanted to make sure the matchups made sense early on. And that's why in the field of 32, there are actually 8 4-contestant pods, and they all have themes. So yes, you may end up with Rosangela's taking on Wolves at the end like you did last year, although I don't think we're going to get the same 2 at the end, but it was a bakery and a pizza place, and that was weird. But in the early going, you're going to have places facing off against each other that you probably consider pretty similar, that maybe you go to both of them. They're going to be really tough matchups in the early going because of that setup. So think of it this way. Field of 32, one side of the bracket is seeded 1 through 16. The other side of the bracket is seeded 1 through 16. We're going to take the left side of the bracket right now. There are 4 different pods that have themes to them that should make the matchups really cool and very interesting. And Porter Cullen's is the number 1 seed on that side of the bracket. And in their pod, they also have Tavern in the Green, Chai Tung, and a restaurant by the name of Toast It Is The is spelled with an I-Z. This is a newer place, does breakfast, lunch, and dinner over on Western Avenue. Every time I go by there, it's got a lot of people. It's not a place that I've gotten into yet. In fact, I've already reached out to them like, hey, I would love to do a review. Let's talk about your spot. And I think very soon we'll get them on the EP podcast. Because we've never talked to them and because they're relatively new, they're a 16 seed, so they got to take on Porter Cullen's right away. The winner of that matchup will take on the winner of number 8 seed Tavern in the Green versus the 9 seed Chai Tung. I think that's a really interesting matchup. They're in a restaurant pod. Those are 4 restaurants. One of them will make it to the Elite 8. The other straight up restaurant pod B, has the 4 seed in it, Spoken Vine. Unidad, TT's, and the Saucy Crab also sit inside of this pod. I love this bracket because it's going to cause people a lot of trouble trying to vote. Like, you're going to do the majority of your voting through Facebook and through the eppodcast.com. You're going to follow us on social media so you can find out when to vote, see updated grids, see everything that's happening in the contest, follow along. Make sure you're following us on all the social medias. But when it comes time to vote, I think this is going to be tough. This is a tough bracket. Spoken Vine has the advantage in my mind because they almost beat Rosangela's last year in the Elite 8. It was close, and Rosie's goes on to win the whole thing. So I think they get a very, very good presence on social media, and they're a year in now. They did that when they were a brand new restaurant. It was just the hype. Now a lot of people have gone to Spoken Vine. You know we love it. They're the 4 seed. They take on the 13 seed, the Saucy Crab over on Western Avenue, and then TT's a 12 seed will have to try to upset Unidad that is located right along 95th, one of the original advertisers on the EP podcast. And I believe that most people have gone to 3, if not all 4 of these places. So this is a tough matchup, and whoever comes out of it has to play the winner of that other foursome that I just gave you to make it to the Final 4. So the restaurants are all grouped together, and it will be intense even in the early rounds. Really cool thing this year. Now, on the bottom half of that side of the bracket, and don't worry, like I said, follow us on social media. You can go to the website. Facebook, I think, is going to be the best place to see the big full grid and follow along as this goes on for the next couple of weeks. We have the Comfort Food Pod. Happy's is the overall 3 seed on that side of the bracket. They're going to take on a place that's over on Western Avenue that's brand new in the last few months. But my daughter, who's on her way to college in a couple of weeks, we're all very excited about that. I'm nervous. She told me if we're going to have a comfort round pod, we had to have a ramen place. Ichido Ramen, located on Western, will take on Pappy's. They're the 14 seed against the 3 seed Pappy's. And I think it's kind of funny because she worked at Pappy's for the last 2 years, worked her last day just a few days ago, and I took her other suggestion and I put them head to head in the first round. La Cocina Jalisciense will take on Wojo's in that pod as well. Wojo's is the 6th seed. La Cocina is the 11. One of those 4 will make it to the Elite 8 and take on the winner of this final pod on that side of the bracket, and that is the Dessert Pod. This one's tough. It's very hard to find 4 places that do desserts in Evergreen Park, like exclusively. Last year's runner-up in the whole contest is the 2 seed on that side of the bracket. It's Wolf's Bakery. They will take on the 15 seed Small Cakes, which is kind of a chain. Like, it's like a small business. I want to say it's like a franchise, but you don't see a lot of them. They're located over on Pulaski. Both of them do baked goods. They're going to go head-to-head in round 1, with the winner taking on Cravings, which is the little ice cream shop that made so much noise last year in the Battle of Evergreen Park. And Cravings will take on the juggernaut that sits in the center of the village at 95th and Kedzie, Oberweis. And again, like I said, I hate doing chains. Not a lot of dessert places to choose from. And Oberweis is right there smack dab in the middle. Now, I still believe in Cravings. I don't think I'm sending them up against an insurmountable mountain, because last year Cravings made noise and won a few rounds in this battle, including, if I'm not mistaken, they took on Rainbow Cone head-to-head when we were letting places in there on the outskirts of Evergreen Park, and they won. So don't sleep on the little ice cream shop over at 99th and Kedzie. That's the 16 on the left side of the bracket. Restaurants, comfort food, desserts. The other half of the bracket on the back end of the show as we announce the Battle of Evergreen Park right here on the EP podcast. Building relationships, supporting the community, and service. These are the things that Country Financial stands for. They're more than just an office you may pass by as you drive through Evergreen Park. They're neighbors who lend a helping hand and support the fabric of your community, including charitable organizations, sports, financial education, and civic organizations. And since Country is already your neighbor, they want to get together and chat. Call your local Country Financial representative, Mike Thauer, today at 708-425-1559 to talk about the things that are important to you and how he can help you protect them. Joining me on the phone line for another month of looking at your health locally, OSF Little Company of Mary has been very gracious lately with the EP podcast, setting us up with some wonderful guests to come on monthly. And this gentleman here is from OSF OnCall Urgent Care, the manager of Urgent Care Operations. We have Ennis Shells III. How are you, sir?
I'm great, Chris, and yourself?
I'm good. Just kind of scrolling through like 15 emails there to be able to make sure I got that right. So break this down for me. Everybody looks at Little Company of Mary, located over on California 95th, and they figure all their facilities are right there. But your urgent cares, there's one in Evergreen Park. Then you can move it west into Oak Lawn and still find facilities. What is the big difference between those different locations? Is it all the same thing, just giving more options, or are there differences to them?
That is correct, Chris. So we have 5 in this metro region / Evergreen Park region. We have 1 in Marionette Park, 1 in Evergreen Park, 2 in Oak Lawn, and 1 in Ford City, which is Chicago. We have all the same services. We are open 365 days a year from 8 a.m. till 8 p.m. or until the last patient is discharged.
And urgent cares now have become something that I use more often. I think, my generation, I'm in my 40s. My parents took me to the pediatrician, and later I was taught, go to your general practitioner whenever you have a problem. And if it's something where you can't get an appointment, you just go to the emergency room. And urgent cares have really become the thing in between, because I've now substituted when it's like a really bad cold and flu season. I've substituted going to an urgent care because I can't get one of my kids into the pediatrician. Do you see people now using them more and more today?
The parents of today, between the ages of late 30s up until probably 45, 50s, are bringing their children, now understanding the importance of urgent cares and bringing their children to the urgent cares when they can't get them into the pediatrician. Before urgent cares became more popular and people became more aware of them, yes, people couldn't get into the doctors, and then they were backfilling the emergency rooms with sore throats, earaches, broken bones, stuff like that. Whereas now you can go to an urgent care and be seen for allergies, back pain, cold and flu, earaches, headaches, minor fractures, pink eye, sore throats, COVID testing, suturing of minor wounds. We see a lot of urinary tract infections. We're also expanding now into occupational health, which includes drug testing and initial injury care for physicals for companies for new hires, as well as BAD testing, which is the breath and alcohol testing when employees are being brought on for new hires as well.
I look at them now as something a little less scary, because even the insurance companies have done a very good job of explaining that, yes, you're covered under urgent care. Like I understand that it's cheaper for me to go to an urgent care than go to an emergency room. And my billing seems very similar. I know everybody's insurance is a little bit different, but very similar to if I just took them to the doctor. So sometimes it just becomes like a convenience thing for me, when before I think it was always just a very scary thing. Like, well, I don't know, what's going to happen when I go to this thing? What's the bill going to look like? Am I going to the wrong place? They're becoming almost the go-to place.
That is correct. Yes, we take all insurances and we'll bill through your insurances, but we have a lot of population out here today, Chris, that does not have insurances and they are looking to pay self-pay. And if you go into emergency room, obviously you don't know what that bill is going to be, and it's going to be more costlier than coming to an urgent care. You can come to one of my urgent cares and you can be seen for self-pay for a regular office visit, which includes testings and labs for 175, and if you need an X-ray, you can be seen for the total visit for 225.
I love that. I actually produce a podcast for a guy locally who sells insurance plans to companies. His name's Butch Zemar. His business is Elite Benefits of America. He's got the Zemar podcast on the Broadcast Basement On Demand Radio Network. So I'm giving him a plug because this would be right up his alley. And what I get from him, and something that has really started to make me feel like it should be this way, is that people can go in and they can repair a car. And they know how much the muffler is going to cost. They know what the brake job's going to be. There's a list right there.
Right.
And a lot of times you have no idea what's happening. Like sometimes I go into a doctor's office or if I have to go to the ER and they're suddenly telling me like, well, you're going to be on the hook for this. And I'm like, well, I would have liked to have known that when I started. I would have liked to have known that like as I walked in the door. I would like to have seen what my payment options were and if out of pocket was better than going through my insurance company. So it sounds to me like you guys are very open about that because you rattled off prices right away.
Yes, and we advertise those prices as well. We have what's called rack cards. So anytime I'm out in the community, I'm out in many of the events in the surrounding communities, always advertising and promoting the OnCall Urgent Cares as well as OSF, Little Company Mary. So, and again, I'm handing out rack cards, and it kind of gives you a list of what we see. Kind of gives you, we also, in addition to, we do sports physicals, yearly physicals, back to school physicals. So we do all that as well. And what's included on that rack card is also the basic prices that we have.
I like the idea you're doing back to school and sports physicals. I would imagine you get a lot of people that come in there because, I don't keep track of that stuff as well as I should. And especially the sports stuff. Like I have a 16-year-old who's an athlete, who's played 2 different sports so far in his first 2 years over at Brother Rice. And all of a sudden it's like, I got to make sure that he's got this paperwork. And so the fact that you guys are doing that, I would think that urgent care it's not really appointments, right? You're showing up and you can get it done that day. I don't have to be like, oh, I got to get your sports physical, but we can't get you scheduled for a week, which sometimes could be a problem for athletes.
Absolutely, Chris. I mean, I've been here. Sometimes I'm here, depending on staffing and how busy the volumes of the clinics are, well into the evening. And a few weeks ago, I had a dad come in and literally his son needed that physical before 6 p.m. that day and ran over to us at about 4:15. And we were able to get him seen, get the paperwork filled out, and get him back to his training camp so that he can move forward with his sports. And those sports physicals are $35.
That's awesome. That's a great deal. Here's the thing, and that's the other thing is that my son plays 2 contact sports. And
okay.
I remember one time I was just really fortunate. We were having a gathering here and I have a cousin who's a neurologist. And he came back from a game and he's like, I took a shot to the head. And luckily, I got a guy who's an expert on it who sat there and just decided to just give him an examination here in the basement and was able to figure out he had like a little bit of a bruise, but he's like, I don't think he has a concussion, and told me what to look for and that, and we were able to move forward. But I would imagine with athletics now, and I know a lot of schools do the best they can to have trainers on site or medical staff, but not all of them have it, and not for every contact sport. This is something you see more and more, especially in the fall.
That is correct. We do, especially in the fall, and we're starting to see in the spring as well, for track and field and baseball and stuff like that, but definitely for the football and the basketball and, yeah.
What would you say people use the urgent care for the most?
People use us the most for pink eye, for cold and flu. As you know, we're now in the fourth year of COVID, and it is starting to ramp up as well. So we are starting to see an influx in patients testing positive for COVID. So they're coming in to be seen whether they're testing positive or not for COVID. We also see and treat for sexually transmitted diseases, so sore throats, suturing of minor wounds. So a lot of that stuff is mild asthma when you need to have a breathing treatment and you need to have medication for that. So it just kind of varies. It kind of varies as opposed to what the season is also.
So I think I can figure it out. I'm pretty confident in myself. Maybe I'm just cocky about it, but I think I can figure out what's the difference between this is an urgent care visit and this is an ER visit. But in case I'm wrong or somebody else out there isn't so sure, is there a golden rule? Is there something you tell people like, no, that's ER. No, we can handle this at urgent care. Like, where do you find the line? And is there a golden rule for people to follow when they're trying to figure out where to go?
Okay. So here within the on-calls, any patient that presents into our clinics, regardless if it's like chest pain, difficulty breathing, which will more than likely be fast-tracked out to an ambulance to an emergency room. But we are going to see that patient. We're going to lay eyes on that patient and then kind of triage from there.
So it almost sounds like the idea would be go into the urgent care unless you're absolutely sure that this is something that's an emergency and you're going to the ER, because the urgent care is going to make that determination quickly and be like, no, you're in the wrong place.
You're absolutely correct. When they choose to go to the ERs, it's severe chest pain, severe difficulty breathing, a severe burn, something like that. Anything else? Yes. Minor cuts requiring stitches, suspected fractures, because we have radiology on site at every clinic to do x-rays. So like I said, asthma, allergic reactions, anything else that I kind of highlighted earlier. All
right. There is a location in Evergreen Park over at Little Company Mary Hospital. There are multiple locations. If somebody wants to find a location, is there do they go to a website? I mean, I would hate for you to have to like throw out like 5 different addresses, like exact ones. Can it go to a website where they can look them all up? If they're here in Evergreen, should they just assume get over there to Little Company if they're in this actual area? That's their best bet?
They could go online and look for OSF OnCall.org /urgent care. And it brings up our website, which lists all 5 of our locations in this region. They can make reservations, or they can just verify our word that we're open and walk in as well and be seen.
Ennis Shells III, Manager of Urgent Care Operations for OSF OnCall. I learned a lot, and I appreciate you jumping on the EP podcast.
Well, I appreciate the offer, and it was a great conversation with you, Chris.
It's now time for your EP podcast, Word on the Street, brought to you proudly by Spoken Vine Wine Bar and Bottle Shop, northeast corner of 95th and Kedzie. A 4 seed on the left side of the bracket in one of the restaurant pods. You heard their first round matchup, the Saucy Crab. They went deep last year. We'll see what they do this year. It's time to go try them out so you can vote faithfully in the Battle of Evergreen Park. So many wines, an incredible menu, 21 and over establishment. What a great place to go and make new friends and hang out with your current friends. See more at SpokenVineWines.com. And if you want to get an extended look at Spoken Vine, the Evergreen Park Library, Frank Murray and I sat down in Spoken Vine, the full 30-minute video, a longer version than what you heard on the audio podcast last week. Multiple dishes, brand new at Spoken Vine. We had an awful lot of fun. That's up on our YouTube channel. Check it out. Look for the EP podcast on YouTube. The library having its Windy City Thunderbolts fundraiser, all benefiting the library, face painting, live animal show, post-game catch, autographs with the players this Sunday, August the 11th, 1:05 p.m. If you go to purchase tickets through the team, the group password is library. Get more details at evergreenparklibrary.org. Meanwhile, August the 9th, that's this Friday, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m., The Green Unplugged returns, an acoustic music night at the driving range over at Sexton Park. Todd and Connie's Acoustic Thing is going to be playing. Food, drinks available for purchase. That's 91st and Rockwell, August the 9th, 6 to 8 p.m. On Sunday, August 11th, Rick Lindy and the Wild Ones perform at 6 p.m. at Klein Park as the summer concert series continues. Bring your blankets, your lawn chairs, pack a picnic basket. Now the bad news. CSX is closing down 95th Street. I mean, you want to love the trains, but you really can't, can you? They have just notified the village of an upcoming temporary closure of the railroad crossing at 95th and Rockwell, and it kicks off on August the 19th. This closure at 95th and Rockwell is going to last all the way until September the 3rd. Get out your maps and start figuring out a better way to get around in that section of town. If you want to know how the railroads work and what can and can't be done about them, remember, on demand, on the website, or wherever you get your podcast, we had Sean Caston in, and we talked specifically about the railroads and CSX. You can always get that episode and check it out anytime at theeppodcast.com. All right, we're running out of time. I want to give you the other half of the bracket, the right side of it. Remember, follow us on social media. Facebook is probably the best this year for the Battle of Evergreen Park. You're going to see some stuff on Instagram, a few little things on Twitter, but the vote's going to basically run through the website at theeppodcast.com and on Facebook. It's like the easiest way for us to do it, and it kind of helps us stop bots. It helps us make sure the vote is fair. And that's what we're going to try to do this year. We want the vote to be as fair as possible in the Battle of Evergreen Park. Now, expanding to 32 seeds, we put a couple places in that don't serve any food, any beer, any wine. You wouldn't eat there. But there are enough of these type of places in Evergreen Park that they got themselves their own 4-contestant pod. A perfect example of this is the Fitness Pod, new to the Battle of Evergreen Park. Core Fitness and Physical Therapy, overall 3 seed, will be taking on the Stone Age Athletic Club. You may have seen them, Kedzie near 103rd. They're a 14 seed. That will be an interesting head-to-head matchup. Core's been around for a while. You've heard him here on the show. Aries Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, an 11 seed, will then take on Worry Taekwondo. 2 places I know you've passed by. You've seen the signs. You've seen demonstrations at different Evergreen Park events. Maybe we should have them actually fight each other, but I don't think they're going to allow that. Although it would be an awesome way to determine who wins. That's the Fitness Pod, and the winner of the Fitness Pod will take on the other non-eatery contestants here in the Battle of Evergreen Park, and that is the apparel stores at the Plaza. The Evergreen Park Plaza really has an incredible selection of apparel stores and places that people can go shopping. It's one of those things you probably should be aware of if you're not aware of it. Like, I don't know why you're driving all the way to Orland when you have these options. So we're putting the big 4 in a contest against each other. This is an experiment. I don't know if this will last till next year, but we're going to try it out this year in the Battle of Evergreen Park. And trust me, I know at some point we're going to have a pizza place against a clothing store, and everybody's going to yell at me for it. But in the early going in this pod, number 2 seed overall, Macy's on that side of the bracket, will take on DSW, and TJ Maxx, a 10 seed, will take on J. Crew, a 7. The winner of the apparel at the Plaza pod will take on the winner of the Fitness Pod. So one of these 8 will make it to the Final 4. And that's where I'm going to get yelled at. That's when people are going to sit there and say, how is this place going up against a pizza place, a bar, a breakfast spot? But this is what the Battle of Evergreen Park is. It's weird at times. It's just a little weird. Maybe Macy's will start serving beer just to win. I mean, get nuts out there. The final 2 pods, one is the Pizza Pod. It's got the number 1 seed, Rosangela's, in it. They'll take on the number 16 seed on that side of the bracket, Slice Factory, located over on Pulaski. And then we have Durbin's, who does pizza. I get the coupons all the time, man. They got good pizza over at Durbin's. They're the 9 seed taking on the 8-seeded Baracos. So Baracos versus Durbin's is going to be a slobber knocker. I would say. That's going to be an interesting one. And the winner of that, taking on the winner of Rosangela's Slice Factory, one pizza place will make it to the Elite Eight. 3 others will fall in the Battle of Evergreen Park early. That is the fun of the way we're setting up these early rounds. And then finally, we have breakfast and beers. I had to make this one up. We have 2 bars that are basically just bars, but they have to be included, and 2 breakfast places that have to be included in the Battle of Evergreen Park, hence the Breakfast and Beers pod, which the winner will take on the Pizza Pod. Hart's Saloon will face off against the American Legion. Both have really good bars. Great place to sit down, have a beer, talk with strangers. Bialys, the 12 seed, will take on the Golden Griddle, the 5 seed, on the breakfast side of that. The winners of each will determine if you prefer beer or breakfast, and the winner of that will run into the pizza group, and the winner of that will probably face an apparel store or a fitness location. This other side of the bracket's weird. I know it's weird, but I wanted 32 this year because people enjoyed the Battle of Evergreen Park last year. Again, follow us on social media. This is kicking off in just a few days. Grids are going to be up over the next 24 to 48 hours for you to peruse them. Voting will be starting likely before we even get to next week's show. Get details on when to vote on your Twitter, on your Instagram. Probably get to vote directly through Facebook. So definitely follow our Facebook page. And we have a group now, an EP Podcast group. So there's plenty of ways to make sure you don't miss out. You can go to the eppodcast.com and get on our email list. So you're going to get updates that way. And you should be able to find a place to vote on the website as well. The Battle of Evergreen Park, an August tradition here in the EP. Ring the bell. It's time to go.
It's the EP Podcast, all things Evergreen Park. It's the EP Podcast, Evergreen Park.